Test, 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 test. Damn, okay. Hey guys, welcome to Adam's Apples. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the Paleolithic and ketogenic diet. So I'm actually going to refer to them as paleo and keto from now on, just to make it a little bit easier. What I do want to say is that I'm not an expert. I am a student. All of the stuff that I'm going through is research, and I can only go through so much research. So forgive me if some of my things seem off, or if I may not have included something that you know about. Which brings me to my next point. If you have any questions, any comments, any suggestions, or anything like that, I want to know about them. Tell me. I would love to hear from my audience, and I want to also know what you guys are thinking about. So that would be really awesome. So again, thank you for joining me here today. Um, I also want to say that if you are considering one of these diets, you need to probably talk to an expert before you do so. Make sure that you're healthy and ready to do something like that. Preferably a dietitian, a registered dietitian. Talk to them. They'll be able to set you up with a diet menu, meal plan, something like that. And at the very least, talk to your primary care physician, your doctor, somebody who is a medical professional. This is my first video. Unfortunately, we also did have a little hang up. I had some other videos that I recorded as I was doing the diet, and I kind of dropped the ball and didn't figure out a way to edit them together to make one continuous video. So I'm just kind of taking the two videos that I did, I recapped them, and I'm going to talk about them here with you guys today. Um, Let me think anything else before we go on. No, so let's get into it. The first thing I kind of want to talk about is the difference in paleo and ketogenic diets. Obviously, a lot of people are going to be curious, like what is Paleolithic, what is ketogenic, what are the difference? Because you might have heard that they're the same. Well, let's start with they are very much the same. So let's start with Paleolithic diet. Um, so I kind of went online and looked up the Paleolithic in general because it wasn't anything as far as the science in detail. And from Men's Health, from Men's Journal, Ultimate Paleo Guide, it came down to this. It's 40% of your calories in a day are going to come from fat. 40% of your calories in a day are going to come from a protein, and the other 20 are going to come from carbohydrates. Okay? Now I want to show you one of my little guides here. And it's pretty cool. Right. Let me see if I can do this. Is it gonna pick up? It's right on my hand. There we go. So you see the energy provided by macronutrients right there, right by my fingers. It says carbohydrate, fat, and protein. Come on. Anyway, maybe I'll pull it back a little bit. It'll tell you. So for every gram of carbohydrate, you're going to get 4 calories. For every gram of fat, you're going to get 9 calories. And for every gram of protein, you're going to get 4 calories. Um, and I don't know if you guys know how to break this down and if you even knew that or not. So what I'm going to do for you now is I'm going to go ahead and show you, not that, bring this over here and minimize this and this. Okay, so I want to show you how to calculate this for yourself. So let's say for me, I eat pretty generally. I'm not a super active guy, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a 2,000 calorie baseline per day, and then I'm going to times it by 40%. This is going to give me both the amount of protein and the amount of fat in calories that I need a day. Now, if you remember what I said, you get 9 calories per gram of fat. So I'm going to go ahead and divide this now by 9. This is going to give me the total amount of grams of fat I need in a day. And then again, you divide that by 3. That gives you how many you're going to have per meal. So 29 or 30 grams of fat per meal. Now I'm going to go back. I'm going to do 800 again, because this is how many calories I need in a day from protein now. So I'm going to divide that by 4, because I get 4 calories per gram of protein, and this is going to give me the grams of protein that I need in a day. Divided that by my 3 meals, more or less 66 to 67 grams of protein in a meal. That's a lot. I found that was one of my major challenges, is I was having to eat a lot of protein, and along with that comes the fat and things like that. Depends on what you're eating, obviously. You're going to have higher fat from higher fat sources. Let's say a grilled piece of chicken versus a sautéed piece of chicken. Two different types of the same piece of meat. 2 different methods of cooking going to give you a different amount of fat, because grilling and baking have no fat sources added, where like sautéing or pan frying or anything like that, you're going to be adding fat to it from outside sources. So what I want to kind of talk about now are some of the other the guidelines of the paleo diet. In a paleo diet, besides the 40% fat, 40% protein, 20% carbohydrates. Oh, I forgot to break down carbohydrates for you. Carbohydrates are the same, except you're going to get a difference. So starting at 2,000 calories again. Show you my calculator here again. Starting at 2,000 calories again, I'm going to divide that by, excuse me, clear this out, clear. 2,000 calories in a day. I am going to times that by the 20%. 2,000 calories in a day. Times that by 20%. There we go. That was the number I was getting earlier. You get 400 calories in a day are going to come from your carbohydrates. And from carbohydrates, same as protein, you're going to get 4 calories for every 1 gram. So I'm going to go ahead and divide this by another 4. That's going to give me my total number of grams of carbohydrates in a day. Divided that by 3, and that's your total 33 or 34 per meal. All right, so I think you guys get the idea here. I'm going to go back to the video, and I'm going to keep talking about this here. So this is really cool stuff here. I hope I'm like sharing a little bit. Again, if you have any questions, please leave any questions down below. Also brings me to another thing. Follow my page if you're finding what I'm talking about interesting at any point. If you have any questions that you're thinking about, writing things down as you go. Follow the page. I've also will be responding to those, and as a little bonus, because I know how to cook, I'm also got my degree for culinary arts. I'm going to be doing recipes in my kitchen. I'm going to be videotaping those, and I'm going to be putting them hopefully down below to the side. You know how those playlists work over here. You know what's up. So back to what we were talking about. I showed you the breakdown here. There's a great resource, by the way. Boom. Awesome. And what you probably might be thinking is that a paleo diet is all about the caveman diet. If you think that, you're wrong. It's not about the caveman diet, though it is about how cavemen might have eaten during that time. You want no processed foods. You want a lot of fruits and vegetables, basically things that you could pick and eat right off of the tree. Maybe minimal cooking. Obviously, it's best for nutrition. I don't know if it's obvious to you, but it's something that is known that bioavailability of nutrients is best right off of the plant, um, especially when they're sprouting. You pick something right off. As soon as you pick it off, it's losing nutrients just because it's getting older and it's essentially is dying. So, um, things you want to exclude from a paleo diet. You don't want dairy. You don't want legumes. However it's said, tomato, tomato. I don't really care, but you don't want legumes in your diet, which include beans, lentils, peanuts. You can't have peanut butter. Besides, even because it's high in sugar, you just don't. You can't have it. It's a legume. It's an exclusion. Anything that's going to be processed, like grains, things that take a lot of time to grow. Think of it that way. If people were nomadic during the caveman time, um, they're not going to be there sitting there grinding out their grains, making it into flours, processing their sugars. They're going to have very basic, like grass-fed meats. Obviously, organic. This is obvious. Organic is better. It's just actually, you know what? I take that back. I don't have the science to prove that, to cite it here, so I'm not going to say it's obvious. But in my opinion, eating organic is better. It's going to be less pesticides and everything. You're going to be putting exactly what you need in your body, not the additional stuff. Um, but let's face it, we're college students. Organic is hard to come by financially, and I can't afford it. So during this time when I was doing my 1 week of a diet, um, I did this diet alongside with my research to make sure that I had firsthand experience to talk about. At the end of the first day, I had a headache. It sucked. By the end of the third day, I pretty much adjusted. I eat a lot of nuts now. I kept a bowl of nuts around. These are actually really tasty. I'm gonna eat a couple right now. Anyway, um, you don't want dairy, which was really hard for me. Mm, sorry. You don't want a lot of dairy. Um, there is controversy about that. They say that dairy from grass-fed animals is actually okay. Other things say no. I just tried to exclude it, which was really hard. There was one time I had a burger that cheese got put on it, and I tried to pull off the cheese, and whatever was sitting on it, still, I obviously still enjoyed it. Um, and other things you want to avoid: refined sugars, candy, super salty foods. But the things you do want to eat, you want to eat meats. Salmon is good. It's okay because it's high in fat and it's a protein source. One of the best things you can actually have is eggs. They have a rating, a bioavailability rating of 100, and that came from my book, Nutrition Concepts and Controversies. This was actually the book that I had for my nutrition class because I am currently studying dietetics. Um, so there was actually a lot of good information from here as far as like synergistic vitamins and minerals, which are synergistic means that they're things that work together and, better than they do alone. Other things you can have, obviously my bowl of nuts, I had some raisins, it's got pistachios. You do not want peanuts again. Those are not truly a nut. Those are a legume. And healthy oils. Um, I wanted to kind of remind people that not all oils, plant-based oils, are necessarily good. Something like coconut oil, for example, I could get some out of my kitchen and show you right now room temperature, it is not liquid. That is the going like guideline. If you have a fat that's a liquid at room temperature, it's an oil, and it is better for you than a fat that is solid at room temperature. Now, Coconut oil is still an oil. It's not coconut fat. It is still an oil, but it is not as good for you as, let's say, um, extra virgin olive oil. Uh, Not as good for you as like a good grapeseed oil or et cetera, et cetera. I mean, do the research yourself, guys. You want to make sure that you're on top of this. Don't just take it from me. Do it on your own. Check the facts. Do it right. Um, there's a reason it's called science, is because people double check it, hopefully, usually. Um, so, um, and number one, the number one most important thing is fill your refrigerator with produce, with fruits and vegetables. Mostly vegetables, not as much fruits. Fruits are going to be high in sugars. So lots of color. All the colors mean that it has a different, usually a different minerals, phytochemicals, different things inside of it that make it that color. And so if you eat a wide variety of color, you're going to be eating a wide variety of the good chemicals that come along with it. Vitamin A, vitamin B, um, beta cyanins. I don't have to get into the science of that because that's not what we're here for. We're here for paleo and keto diets. But the basis is fill your refrigerator with lots of vegetables and enjoy them raw, preferably. So that's paleo in a nutshell. The ketogenic diet is essentially the same, more strict on the carbohydrates, and you actually eat more fat than protein. So it breaks down into about an 80% fat, 10 to more or less 15% proteins, and 5%, give or take a percent, it doesn't have to be exactly 5%, but depends on your body to put yourself into a ketogenic state. And I'm going to try to read this right out of the book here, my nutrition book, Nutrition Concepts and Controversies, Select Edition 13 by Sizer and Whitney. On page 132 of this edition, or 133 of this edition, ketosis is when essentially what happens is your body starts producing energy through use of ketones because it has too little carbohydrates to be able to sustain itself on. So it causes an accumulation of acidic byproducts called ketone bodies, which are not going to be good because you can get into a state of what's called ketoacidosis, which is why this is not something that you should do unless you know it is right for you. I'll talk about who it's right for a little bit later, and I've got a couple studies to talk about for you guys too later from some scientific journals. But people that are eating diets that produce ketosis may develop deficiencies of vitamins and minerals, loss of bone minerals, elevated blood cholesterol, impaired mood, and other adverse outcomes. I'm most worried about the impaired mood one. I don't know about you guys, but I get hangry pretty easy. And that was another thing. I said I felt like a paleo zombie because I was walking around instead of wanting brains, I was wanting grains. And somebody said that was a dad joke, and I was like, I couldn't agree more. I love dad jokes, and yeah, I love punny stuff. So I'm sorry for subjecting you to that one, guys, but I was definitely feeling like a paleo zombie. Um, so ketosis isn't bad. Ketone bodies provide a fuel alternative to glucose for brain and nerve cells when glucose is lacking, such as starvation or very low carbohydrate diets, which I told you about earlier. Therapeutic ketogenic diets can be used medicationally, and I will medically, I'll talk about that in just a few minutes. So there are a couple other differences with ketogenic diets. They can have a very small amount of like breads, grains, pastas, fruit, milk, yogurt. Some of the things that I told you were exclusions on the paleo diet. Yeah, that's awesome and crappy at the same time because you only get a little bit of what's so good. So it might be better just to exclude some of those things after all and stick with the fruits that you guys were already eating. Um, You can have sugars on both diets. You just want to stay away from refined sugar. So stick with cane sugar. Raw cane sugar is awesome. Um, the analogy I came up with for state of ketosis in your body is, imagine this, is if coffee were like a secondary source of energy for like college students, and for most people it is. I'm kind of starting to drink a lot more coffee lately too. Um, it would be like running out of things to snack on when you're studying or like doing a project or something, and then you switch over to the coffee because the coffee is the only thing you've got. Um, and but just like drinking coffee and ketogenic diet, you don't want to do either one of them for a sustained period of time, because otherwise you're not going to be going to sleep cracked out 4 a.m. in the morning, your project submitted, and you don't know what to do with yourself, and you end up binge watching something like The Office. So once again, it's about 80% fat, about 10 to 15% protein, more or less about 15% protein, and then um, no more than right around 5% carbohydrates. Forces your body into a state of ketosis. Um, the second half of my experience, or second half of my week, I talked about day one and day three. After that, I adjusted. I got used to eating nuts as snacks, unsalted with a little bit of. Actually, what I did is I mixed half of salted nuts with half of the unsalted nuts with like golden raisins and whatnot in it, and avocado. Avocado is a great plant-based source, unsaturated fat coming from a plant-based source. It is a lot better for you than a lot of the other things that you're going to get. And along with a lot of your exclusions, you're going to have deficiencies in vitamins. You're going to from the dairy, you're going to have potentially you're going to be deficient in calcium, potassium, vitamin A, vitamin D, riboflavin, which you can combat by eating salmon, which actually has calcium in it, especially if you eat it with the bones. I know that sounds weird to a lot of people, but if they're little tiny pin hair bones, cook it with the bones in there, and see if you can tolerate eating them, because a lot of the time they just get really soft and you'd be surprised. You can eat almonds, dark leafy greens, dried fruit in moderation, because again you want to be careful of your sugars, and that also gives you some good potassium. And a good alternative I found for a lot of things is squash. I love potatoes. You can't have potatoes because of the starchiness of them. They're really too high in starch, and potato substitute is squash, butternut squash. There was another one, I can't remember the name of it. It starts with a K. It's really complicated to say, but if you look it up, you'll find it, and it's really freaking tasty, roasted with just a little bit of salt and pepper. Um, what else? Oh, the exclusion of grains. You're going to be missing folate, niacin, which is vitamin B3, riboflavin, um, thromine, thromine. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I've got my notes down here, but it's in dry erase marker, so that blended together. Iron, magnesium, which is what brought me to this in the first place. Is avocado is a good source for magnesium. Oh, going back to my handy dandy nutrition guide, which I picked up at my bookstore on campus at Orange Coast College, has a guide of the nutrients. Calcium, chromium, folic acid, iodine, iron. I wish this would come in focus. There we go. Magnesium, manganese, phosphorus. You get the idea. I don't have to go through all of them. Um, yeah. So um, once again, I kind of want to show you this, guys. This was pretty funny. Once again, coffee is like ketones. This is not exactly how it works. Maybe some of us like to believe it, but not exactly how it works. But coffee is like ketones because they get used as a secondary source instead of carbohydrates. Um, so yes. And lastly, I want to talk about like kind of the benefits. Did I find any benefits? Were there none? there were actually a couple of science-based benefits. Now, for the average everyday Joe, no, this is not the diet for you guys. It's really hard. I only managed to do it because I knew I'd only be doing it for a week, and I knew as soon as I was done I was gonna go eat some tortilla chips. Ooh, tortilla chips. And yeah, so I wasn't worried about it. But somebody who's going to be doing this for a long period of time, you got to have a good reason. You're going to want to have a medical reason, or you're going to be an athlete, because some athletes I've shown that um, they've shown that athletes actually can benefit from a long sustained period of, well, I guess not more than a couple years, but the study that was for a long period of time showed that. Let me just bring it up here. Boom, boom. 6-week non-energy restricted ketogenic diet on physical fitness, body composition, and biochemical parameters in healthy adults. This essentially told me that what I just told you, that it's only good for athletes. The results were that out of 42 subjects, age range, give or take 12 years from 37, so they're anywhere from 25 to 49 apparently, completed the study. Urinary ketosis was detectable 97% of the days, revealing that it is good compliance with the diet. Mean energy intake did not change from the habitual diet. And the conclusion basically says that detected mild negative impact from the 6-week non-energy restricted ketogenic diet on physical performance, which they measured by squeeze test, which we did in our class, if you guys remember that, which was basically the same thing that we did here. They did a fitness running test as well. And then they also measured like glucose, insulin, a couple other different hormones that would be released. And eventually they ended up finding that it did not matter, but that it may be a matter of concern in competitive athletes. I'm assuming that's a negative because it doesn't specify. However, ketogenic diet may be a matter of concern in competitive athletes. I'm going to go to the results again. Anyway, I shouldn't be reading this while I'm talking to you guys. I'm going to probably edit that out, but if I don't, oh well. And back to my notes. Another really cool thing is that study done by Nestle Corporation, is Nestle Health Science. They did a ketogenic diet guidelines. Gave me a breakdown and everything, and I found it was really interesting that they mentioned that it was effective in a management of epilepsy in kids and adults. And I did further research on it, and it actually backs it up in my nutrition book. So early in the prior to anti-epileptic drugs in the 1930s, again, thank you Nestle Health for this information and the research that you guys published. It was used as a medicated or medically used diet to control seizures. Was really cool. I did not know that that was that until until that was something that was possible until I did this research, which just backs that there's so many different things that diet has a relation to. Which brings me my next point is that there was a 14-year-old study. This study was done by IJCR, which is the International Case Reports and Images. I will get to the title here. Crohn's disease successfully treated with Paleolithic ketogenic diet. And so this 14-year-old kid, I've got my notes right here, I'm going to read. 14-year-old kid was diagnosed with Crohn's disease after he was getting lethargic. He was having a hard time focusing in school and performing in his studies. And so for 1 year, he was on these 5 different meds. and nothing was working. If anything was working, it worked temporarily, and eventually his mom and his family got sick of it, I guess, and they looked for a holistic method. And so this kid was prescribed a Paleolithic ketogenic diet, which he strictly adhered to. He was awesome on the compliance on this. They said, and even accounted for, the one time he broke diet was he was eating a paleo approved cake that had a specific ingredient that wasn't paleo approved. But that didn't affect it overall. He actually improved. So he was 14 years old on September 30th on 2013. Um, on September 25th, 2014, all the treatments failed or were temporary. So he's prescribed this diet of animal fat, meat, offal, and eggs in a 2-to-1 fat to protein ratio, where red meats and fat meats were instead of poultries because they have higher fat content. Which also brings me to another point. If you're going to be eating more protein, you need to be upping your fiber intake because you need to be pushing all of that through. Yeah, you don't want to get backed up eating too much protein. Um, Not that I had that problem or anything. I just wanted to mention it so you don't have that problem. Um, he was also, again, he was excluded grains, milk, dairy, refined vegetable oils, oil seeds, nightshades, which actually includes tomatoes. Tomato is not a fruit or a plant. It's technically part of the nightshade family, the only edible nightshade. And artificial sweeteners were all exclusions. There's one instance where he was eating a paleo cake, which wasn't actually paleo. And by let's see, the 10th of November in 2015, he showed all of his signs of illness had gone away. And he had effectively been treated of his Crohn's disease using a Paleolithic ketogenic diet. And so I thought that was freaking cool. So, once again, I wanted to say thank you to the publisher for that. Let me see. They have quite a few different references to this. Very, very reputable. And I've included the citations. I'll include all the citations and everything in my work below, so that way you'll be able to see exactly what I'm talking about, guys. Another one was from the uh, uh, trying to find it. It says face. What happened here? I'm gonna have to go back to my link. Ketogenic diet. There we go. The ketogenic diet alters endocrine regulation of energy, metabolism, and ultra endurance athletes. Was from the Federation of American Societies for Experimental Biology. Again, that was Federation of American Societies for Experimental Biology. That is a tongue twister. These are not easy to say. So their conclusion was that in elite ultra endurance athletes, long-term ketogenic diet is associated with higher glucagon levels before, during, and after aerobic exercises. This is in conjunction with more than a twofold higher rate of peak fat oxidation. Um, it's saying that it actually in the ultra endurance athletes, which these guys were all running. It wasn't a strength test included. It was all running. They improved their ability to utilize ketones and produce ketones to produce energy. So a little bit of a conflicting result there between the two different journals. So again, that's why you do um, extra research on everything and make sure that you find something and re-solidify your side on it. And the last thing I would like to talk about is my overall conclusion. Excuse me. My overall conclusion in this. I found that for me, it wasn't that bad, but I know how to, because of prior experience in culinary, knowing the portion sizes, also with my previous education with nutrition, I thought it was I thought it wasn't that bad. There are people that are going to benefit from this. Obviously, if you have seizures and you don't want to take medications, talk to your doctor about or a dietitian about switching to a ketogenic style diet. Don't just do it on your own. Um, Obviously, not good. Not good. Don't do it on your own. Um, I want to also look over my notes here, make sure there's nothing else I want to talk about. Um, oh, weaning down. If you are going to do this, you're going to need to prepare. There's a lot of preparation. I already did a lot of preparation in my grocery shopping when I went to Whole Foods, excuse me, Sprouts when I picked up my nuts and chicken and stuff like that. Um, but do a lot of research and recipes because you guys are going to get bored of eating the same thing every time if you do it that way, and then it's going to be easy to fall off your diet. So do a lot of variation. You can do like jalapeno poppers. There's bacon wrapped pineapple. There's multiple different recipes which are really good that you can do. The squash was by far one of my favorite things about this is I roasted squash a lot and it was delicious. I would say pick up one of these nutrition guides that I have. Um, Try to find one that's in date, you know, make sure that it's reputable. Also, um, for what I was looking for, it worked perfectly because it showed sources for my macronutrients and different things, as well as that little guide for the proteins. And there it is, finally in focus. Cool. And yeah, so thanks again, guys. I want to really thank you for tuning in. I know this was a long video, and I'm sorry it's all in one and not in segments like I had originally planned. But I hope you took something away from this. If you have any questions that you thought of, please put them down below. Any comments? Be nice. This is my first go at videos, so don't be too mean. I've got pretty thick skin, but you know, within reason, guys. Um, uh, yeah, thank you so much. Tuning out. Thanks again. This is Adam's Apples, and I will talk to you guys next time.